Good evening, viewers, and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies, and perspectives. With blasts in Kabul and people from all communities trying to flee in panic, the world's worst fears are coming true in Afghanistan. It has triggered heated debate in the Indian media as well. We will take a look at some of those issues this evening, but first, what made news? A significant milestone was achieved in our relentless fight against COVID this week. Half of India's adult population is now vaccinated with at least one dose. Experts believe this will drastically reduce threat of the virus as states begin to unlock outdoor activities. Meanwhile, media reports of the vaccine for children of 12 and above have also generated much hope. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman unveiled an ambitious 6 lakh crore rupees national asset monetization plan for the core infrastructure sectors like railways, roads, etc. A 4-year roadmap has been prepared for the proposed NMP, the FM informed. However, opposition parties like the Congress and the left criticized the policy, terming it equivalent to selling the country's jewels. Government of India once again established its credentials as the savior of persecuted minorities and a responsible neighbor by coming to the rescue of Hindus and Sikhs fleeing the Taliban regime. Senior Cabinet Minister Hardeep Singh Puri himself received the saroop of the Holy Guru Granth Sahib at the airport from a batch of Sikh refugees. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar briefed political parties on the government's efforts on evacuation and other relief measures. Whether Punjab, Chhattisgarh or Rajasthan, it's Congress versus Congress as senior leaders and chief ministers fight a no-holds-barred battle in full public glare. Despite claims of the party's central leadership, the situation continues to worsen each day. The bitter Congress infighting in all the 3 states ruled by the party was all over the media throughout the week. After an unprecedented move of getting arrested for an offhand comment, Union Minister Narayan Rane slammed Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, reminding him of offensive and even abusive comments on CMs of other states. Rane reiterated that he would not be cowed down by the brazen overreach of power. He was granted bail just hours after his arrest in the Mahad area of Maharashtra. So those were some of the headlines, viewers, which you saw flashed in the media all through the week. We saw people from the minority community in Afghanistan pleading to the world community to help them in order to get out of the Taliban rule, and Government of India, as expected, came to their rescue as a responsible neighbor. We saw batches of these people, these refugees arriving in Delhi and other cities, and they are now trying to pick up the pieces of their life. It has now become very clear that despite all those press conferences and the arguments by apologists, it is clear that the Taliban will not tolerate minorities in their rule. That, by the way, has triggered and reignited the debate over CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act, in the Indian media as well. Apart from that, there are still a handful of apologists who are trying to create false equivalences, as we flagged in our last episode, and now they are trying to make it a global narrative. We'll come to all those issues one by one, and to understand those issues better, I have a very special panel of guests here with me. Let me introduce to you, I have here with me my first guest of the evening, Abhinav Pandya. You have heard him on Media Scan earlier, a well-known author, researcher and analyst of geopolitical, geostrategic issues. Welcome to Media Scan, Abhinav Pandya.
Thank you so much, Smita.
My second guest for the evening is Vicky Nanjappa, an ace news reporter and a well-known columnist, again on internal security, terror and related issues. Welcome back to Media Scan, Vicky Nanjappa. Good evening.
Good evening, Smita. Thank you so much.
So let's get on with the discussion right away, and I want to come to Abhinav Pandya first. Abhinav Pandya, I know that your book, which was focused on the issue of radicalization in this part of the globe, has been very widely read and is being discussed at various platforms. So from your research, from your experience and your understanding of the situation, how do you look at the Indian media and some in the Indian political sections trying to reignite the debate over the CAA? Let me just make the question slightly clearer to you. You know, we have seen two kinds of reactions coming in from the intelligentsia, the political class, and even columnists, media persons. On the one hand, people are giving the argument that seeing the condition, the plight of the religious minorities in Afghanistan at present under the Taliban rule, it just reinforces the fact that the Indian government was very far-sighted and visionary in bringing a law like the CAA. On the other hand, the counter argument being given is that because the kind of atrocities we are seeing and being written about is being, the oppressions are being meted out to the Muslims as well for some or the other reason. Therefore, there are arguers on the other side of the spectrum who say that because there is no distinction in oppression, so therefore the CAA is actually, it shows that the CAA has been completely negated under the circumstances, and they claim that this goes to show that the CAA's rationale was not factual. So looking at these two extreme arguments, how would you look at the whole debate? What is your perspective? Abhinav Pandya?
Thank you so much, Smitaji, for inviting me once again. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here on this panel. Personally, I prefer to take a very realistic stand on this CAA NRC issue. Earlier also, I had argued in the favor of CAA NRC because there are a couple of things which we have to keep in mind. Okay? In our neighboring regions, okay, especially Hindus are a persecuted minority in Pakistan, be it Bangladesh, be it Afghanistan. And you can see the statistics, the number which was present in 1947, see, like for instance, Pakistan, it was 15%. Now it's not even 2% or less than 2%. In Bangladesh, it has drastically fallen. In Afghanistan, it has drastically fallen. Now the question is that, see, Hindus have nowhere to go. I mean, it's only India which is the country like where they can come and they can seek shelter, they can seek refuge. So we have the right to give protection to them. And as far as Muslims are concerned, see, I mean, definitely we want to protect everyone who is persecuted and oppressed, but we are not a very developed country. We have some kind of resource constraints. We are a developing country. In some parts, even we are underdeveloped. So we have to be very realistic when it comes to giving protection and all. And if you see our track record over the last 60, 70 years, we have given immense amount of shelter and refuge to the Muslim migrants from our neighboring countries. But then there is a limit. From Bangladesh, Muslims were coming purely for economic reasons. Okay. And then we also saw that some communities like Rohingya Muslims who came here and they were kind of like in a way supporting and strengthening terrorist sleeper cells. So those factors also have to be counted in.
So are you saying, Abhinav Pandya, allow me to interrupt you here. Yes, are you saying that we are not exactly ignoring or denying or even whitewashing the oppression upon people of the majority community in those countries, especially our neighbors? However, we have a resource constraint, and at the same time we have done it in the past. We do have to look at other, other concerns before we take a call on this. I want to bring in Vicky Nanjappa here. Vicky, you are an expert on internal security, terror and such related issues. Tell us from your understanding and the way the media has been treating the subject lately, do you think that the argument that this giving preferential treatment to Hindus and Sikhs or perhaps Buddhists in some other countries, it is not rational because there are other people who are facing oppression, the majority community in those countries? How do you look at it?
Smitaji, in the past 3 days, I've only been screaming saying that, secularism cannot precede national security, one thing, okay. And the thing is about, when we come down to the specific topic about CAA, I mean, I think it is the best time to, send across a message to the rest of the world saying that, this is a country, that the Sikhs can come down, basically the persecuted minority. And I think it is time to start rolling it out now. So it is the best way to send across a message now to the rest of the world that, CA was, introduced for a particular reason. The thing is, if anybody is saying that, the minority in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan has not been persecuted, then, they're absolutely, being blinded by, I don't know, whatever factors I would say. So how I would look at it is, with the Afghan crisis, rolling out right now, in the sense, of course, there is this 6-year period that you have to sit and wait for, before you get the citizenship. I think we should start rolling it out now, and, this will kind of, see, let's say the situation is terrible in Afghanistan. Okay, the thing is, the 140...
Okay, we'll come to that, Vicky, but I just want a quick query here. From what we saw happening over the week in our own country, there were some leaders from the Sikh community, from some Sikh organizations also, who are saying that it is time Government of India should rethink on the cutoff date, considering the situation in Afghanistan, because it looks like the Hindus and Sikhs are the worst persecuted there. It's almost as if Afghanistan is now will be bereft of all minorities.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't, entirely agree with the, the thing about rethinking on the cutoff date. But I would definitely suggest, we, continue to evacuate these people in need. But however, one thing I say, whoever we evacuate, there has to be, real thorough screening of these people, and, you need to keep a real watch on them. Don't let them off the radar immediately, because I wouldn't rule out a fact that, Taliban or ISI, getting into this and, trying to infiltrate people into our country and things like that. CA is fine as it is. There's no problem. But we need to really start rolling it out now and, send a message to the rest of the world that, after all, Smitaji, they were part of Greater Bharat at the end of it, all of them. So, they have a country to come back to at the end of it, So, in that sense, if I look at it, I think I don't see any, reason why, people are debating against the CA.
No, but you have raised a concern about security issues, even as we give a shelter to these people. Abhinav Pandya, do you share the concern expressed by Vicky that even as we give shelter or refuge to our people, those who are coming from Afghanistan, no matter which community, we have to make sure that our security is not jeopardized? Or I mean, what is your take on it?
Certainly, I share Vicky's thought and, Vicky's concern. In fact, I'm very worried about this security part, because the regime which has come in Afghanistan, it is aimed at Ghazwa-e-Hind, which is, the Islamic conquest of Hind. And for that, since now they are all centered, they are all established there, they will resort to all mechanisms to accomplish that objective. And the Khalistani terrorist organizations are hands in glove with ISI. So they may use these channels to infiltrate their cadres, their sleeper cells, their operatives in any possible manner. Besides that, we also need to be aware of the fact, when we are taking people from Afghanistan, that Taliban regime believes in the Deobandi Islamic ideology. And Deobandi Islam is spread across the country, across the length and breadth of India. So we have to be really, concerned about that, some of their preachers, some of their people who they try to infiltrate, they may spread out to various parts of country and, radicalize people and indulge in all kinds of sabotage.
What are you
activity.
saying? I mean, what do we do under the circumstances? If people are seeking help, we have to rise up to their situation. India believes in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. We have a responsibility.
We can do a lot of things. First of all, people who are coming in our country, there has to be a 360-degree rigorous scrutiny of the people who are coming. And after they enter our country, we have to keep them on monitor on a very regular, serious basis. And secondly, India is heading the United Nations Security Council right now. India should talk about sending the UN peacekeeping force to Afghanistan. India should also talk about Muslim countries giving shelter and refuge to Muslims in Afghanistan, because the Hindus and Sikhs, they have no other country to go. But Muslims, and especially the countries which call themselves Islamic nations, they consider themselves the part of Ummah, the custodians of holy Muslim sites. So it is their religious duty to give shelter and refuge to persecuted Muslims. So India should certainly raise this matter with the Muslim countries of the Gulf, and and they should share the burden. In fact, it's not a burden.
Vicky,
it's a service
allow me, Abhinav Pandya,
Islam.
to bring in Vicky also here. A very interesting point you have raised. Vicky Namjappa, you just heard Abhinav Pandya raise the issue to say that, he suggested a few measures that India might take at this critical juncture. At the same time, he has suggested that because the Muslim Ummah is a pretty large I mean conglomerate of countries, you know, so the Indian government should raise the issue of Muslims who are being persecuted there, because for Hindus and Sikhs there is no other country they can actually look at as their home. So how do you look at this situation and this whole argument that it's not only Hindus and Sikhs who are persecuted, you know, the argument that is being peddled to against the rationale of the CA?
Yeah, I mean, I would completely, back what Abhinav is saying. Actually, that's one thing we should raise it at the UN. Considering the whole thing is that what he says is so right, because the Hindus and Sikhs and the Buddhists, they have only India to come to, and that is why the CA makes so much of sense. One thing. And about there are persecuted Muslims also. There are factions within them also. There are Muslims who are being persecuted in these countries. So I think the Muslim majority countries, should intervene and take them in and give them refuge. All these things. But when I look at the whole situation, there is only one thing that I would say is that whoever is coming in, irrespective of what, you keep them under tight scrutiny at least for a year, because we don't know who's going to lead the Taliban, who's going to, form the government out there. 1 year down the line, Smitaji, we don't know what kind of a policy that the Afghan government would have towards refugees, whether they're going to take them back or not, whether they will stay here. We don't want, one more crisis, like what happened with the, the Bangladesh immigrants coming here, and, you saw the absolute chaos, Bardwan, land jihad, etc., and things like that. We don't want one more crisis, happening here.
Right.
So,
Point taken, Vicky. And I understand the concern that you have raised. In fact, a lot of defense and strategic experts, we had a discussion on it in the earlier episode as well. But certainly the situation is worsening by the day. On that point, I have to take on the next subject on the table, which is also in a way connected to the Afghanistan situation, but not because of the people living there, but because of certain elements in the global community who are trying to raise a false equivalence. And while on the one hand they create all kinds of apologistic arguments in favor of terrorist organization, particularly the Taliban at this point of time, they try to raise false bogies. They try to create false equivalences and act as a diversionary measure to divert the attention of the world community to imaginary threats. One such threat being peddled again and again by a segment of academics, activists and certain organizations working at the international level is that of global Hindutva, whatever that means. We are seeing a lot of heat being generated on the social media regarding a conference which is interestingly titled Dismantling Global Hindutva. People who are aware of India's civilizational history, our legacy, our philosophy, and the way Indians are living in a beautiful instance of unity in diversity, they have reacted very sharply to it. However, it seems that there are certain very big institutions, important institutions in the US who are trying to sponsor this event, which has created a lot of reaction among Indians here in the US and all other parts of the world. So I'll come to Abhinav Pandya first on this, and very quickly, Abhinav Pandya, how do you look at this entire event being peddled of dismantling global Hindutva? How do you think Indians should react? Should the government try to make a move on this? What should be the line? How do we counter such moves?
Well, I have a few points to share. First of all, when we hear words like academics, prestigious universities, civil rights activists, we shouldn't really get impressed, because these days all these people are simply proxy agents for various intelligence organizations. First of all, logically speaking, this whole, this figment of imagination called global Hindutva is a non-starter, because if you statistically compare, if you do a serious, rigorous research-based study, then there is no comparison between the jihadist terrorist organization and this fictitious idea of Hindutva. Just tell me the number of bomb blasts which any Hindutva organization has done. Tell me the number of drug racketing in which any Hindutva organization is involved. So thus, This comparison equivalence is it's just a joke. It's you know, this can be at the most it can be ridiculed. And when
So
big
how do we
prestigious,
counter it? I mean,
yeah,
even
just,
if
I'm
we
coming.
ridicule
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
if they go on with the
No, I'm
move,
coming.
there may
Yes.
be people who will, you
Yes.
know, who will be
Okay.
impressed with their argument. Not everybody is
Yes.
aware of the realities.
Uh, so so the thing is that many of these academicians, because as you mentioned, some of them were advocating very passionately about talking to Taliban, legitimizing or giving some justification to the terrorist regime. These people and some of the prestigious universities who are funding such events like dismantling global Hindutva, they are on the payrolls of all these intelligence regimes and intelligence organizations of third-rate rogue countries like Pakistan and China. So we really need to expose these unholy nexuses and alliances and counter them and expose them, and also counter this whole idea on a logical and in an academic manner. We need to, I mean, government can do in its capacity whatever limited work it can. But then it's the work of the civil rights activists, it's the work of the people, honest scholars, academicians, to expose such nefarious activities. They should logically prove that, I mean, there's nothing called global Hindutva. And also the funding channels of these prestigious universities. They don't speak a word against Pakistan. They don't speak a word against all these terrorist and extremist, totalitarian, jihadist structure of Kashmir. And if you go to Harvard and Cambridge, there will be whole Kashmir chapter and Kashmir, organizations talking about fundamental rights and talking about India's atrocities. But these universities, which claim themselves to be the doyen of the liberalism and fundamental rights and democracy, they are acting hands in glove with the global jihadist organizations.
So Abhinav Pandey, I get your point, and a lot of it has been visible in the past decades as well, but it just seems to be becoming more aggressive from certain quarters at the moment. On that note, I want to bring in Vicky Nanjappa also here and have his perspective on what he thinks these efforts like dismantling Global Hindutva Conference and similar efforts, what are they trying to convey? Because Abhinav Pandya has presented a pretty dismal picture, a nexus of jihadi elements and security agencies in certain rogue countries combined with with certain activists and NGOs. That's a pretty, that's a pretty scary picture, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. One thing I would say, these are all diversionary tactics. The thing is, I always say that the threat is from within. Let the global propaganda keep happening, but when the propaganda starts happening.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Vicky, here, but you must be aware that even though there are global powers who are trying to sponsor and help, etc., but the participants in that conference, if you note, they are mostly Indians, very much Indians who have been trying to sell these arguments all over.
But Smitaji, if you see, it all began with selling this concept called as Hindutva terror, which all cases fell flat. Number one, okay,
right?
That is one thing. We begin there. That is where the propaganda begins. I always say, the internal threat is definitely much more dangerous than the external threat. And when you start squeezing out these NGOs, and you stop their fund flows inside, this will automatically stop, because this is. Definitely one part is propaganda and a bigger part is money, one thing. I just want to ask one question to all these people. Kerala has contributed nearly 100 radicalized elements to the ISKP in Afghanistan. Today there was a blast outside the Kabul airport, which was, claimed by the ISKP. Why is nobody talking about it? Why is everybody so quiet about Kerala? Do they understand, what is going to happen in Kerala? Basically, because of this kind of a blast, it's going to inspire so many people, and these radicalization and recruitment tools are going to be an overdrive mode. So why doesn't anybody talk about that? And what is this, global Hindutva, etc., whatever it is? That one thing is that it's just a complete diversion, from what is actually happening.
So viewers, if I gather correctly, what Vicky Nanjappa is trying to tell us is that while these kind of conferences and such events held whether in India or abroad are meant to divert the attention of the people from the core issues at hand, it is actually the threat that is emanating after the capture of Afghanistan of the Taliban in the recent days that we have to worry more about, particularly in the kind of security concerns and security threats it raises for our country, right from Kerala to Kashmir. I am afraid, viewers, despite this second episode on the subject related to the developments in Afghanistan. There is still so much left to be discussed. There is so much still left on the table. I guess one of these weekends we'll have to come back to it and have another special panel of guests who will help us understand the complex and sensitive issues better. On that note, allow me to thank both my guests profusely for being so generous with us in explaining the issues to us so very candidly. Thank you very much, Abhinav Pandya. Thank you, Vicky Nanjappa, for joining at a short notice and telling us in such a detailed manner your thoughts on the subject.
Thank you, Smitaji. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
With that, viewers, I've completely run out of time this evening, so it's time to wind up and sign off. So do keep watching DD India as we continue to scan the media for you. Good night.